Before today's topic, a quick disclaimer. The stories and data we share come from the states that we practice in and the experiences we personally had, which can differ greatly across our country and certainly the globe. This is not a professional advice show. So get comfy and let's discuss death.
Hello, and welcome to MortMic, a down-to-earth discussion on death and dying. I'm Jem.
And I'm Red, and we are your ghastly ghouls.
So we're all familiar with the common horror movie tropes that infest the genre. Spooky settings must be haunted, right? Basements and attics, check. Deep forests and secluded cabins that lie within, yup. Cemeteries, morgues, and funeral homes, of course. But ghosts and ghouls aren't real, are they?
People like to assume, since we're in the death industry, we have to have some sort of ghost story to go along with all of our time spent around the deceased and their places of passing. But does this hold true for us? I think the most important question to start with is what we categorize ourselves as. So how skeptical are you on a scale of, let's say, Scully to Mulder?
So I would like to say that I'm a Scully, but I'm a total Mulder, like 100, 100%. So why I say that is because of Scully, like I am a very logical person. I'm very like scientific oriented. Obviously, like I'm going into pathology as a graduate student, as a medical professional. But, just like me, myself, and like growing up, I've always been a Mulder. And Mulder's like logical too, but he just like believes in the logic of ghosts. So I
Right.
do believe in ghosts. I do believe in spirits. Very much so. And I believe in like that sort of spiritual realm, whatever it may be, for whatever people think it may be. But whatever it is, I do think it's there for sure. What about you, Red?
I personally would probably say definitely a hard end of like on the Scully side. I mean as the X-Files said, I mean I want to believe, they're out there, but I have never seen anything or experienced anything that has really made me a firm believer. It doesn't mean that I'm totally like against interactions with extraterrestrials and all these crazy cryptids and things, but I just haven't gotten that solid evidence that I crave to really prove something to me.
Right. Yeah, and unlike you, I actually have had a couple experiences that we'll talk about later. But despite those experiences, I'm definitely like well, you never know. Like if you don't know, if you haven't seen proof of it, how do you know it doesn't exist? You know what I mean?
Right.
So like I'm a little bit of the opposite. Like, I have not seen an alien, but that doesn't mean that they're not out there. Do. Same with same with ghosts and spirits and stuff like this, especially in the funeral industry and, seeing dead bodies on a daily basis.
Sure. I feel like I've always been like a show me kind of person. Like this is so dumb. I've always been super like logical about spooky things, like bumps in the night. I've usually been able to explain them away, and it all came from a television show. When I was like a little kid, like I used to have a very active imagination. Of course, you see all sorts of monsters in the shadows and the clothes in your closet. And there was a Jimmy Neutron episode where there was like that haunted pizza or whatever.
Oh my God, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and like Jimmy was just like logicking it away essentially of just like, oh well, there's no way it could possibly be this because I'm a big science nerd, and like for some reason that stuck with me ever since I was a kid. I'm just like, okay, you thought you saw a spooky thing, let's try to like think of all the things that it could be instead of like what monster it might be. So I guess that kind of stuck with me adulthood where we are now. So
That's true. But if I remember correctly, didn't in the episode he like ignored it and that caused it to get stronger and then there was like a pizza monster flying around and destroying everything, or
all
am I wrong?
right, you might have a point here.
I'm just joking with you. But yeah, I feel like everyone does have like their different opinions on especially something so unknown, and like it's so hard to get like solid research on like the spirit world and like
Right.
ghosts and like the afterlife. You know, everyone's just kind of like taking a shot in the dark. So everyone has their own opinion, and you know, it's important to like respect that. But it is cool to think about, you know, regardless.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you even think about the progression of science and things in the last few hundred years.
Mhm.
Things that we thought were totally like kooky, crazy acts of God back in the day are just like scientific fact now. So that could totally be something in the same realm of just like we just don't have the tools and the instruments to be able to measure these things and like research them properly yet.
Exactly. Do you know how many old-timey people thought that there were like ghosts in your blood if you were like sick or something like
Yeah,
that?
we let me just put a hole in your brain to let the demons out. You know, like.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so you never know where we're going to be in the next, you know, 50 years or whatever it is. I think what a lot of people assume about professionals that work in the death industry is that because we are around death so often, we must be surrounded by ghosts. Like, you know, do you remember that TV show, like the Ghost Whisperer or whatever it was? And
Yeah.
she would like see the people. I like get people asking me, like, are there like, you know, thousands of ghosts just like around you all the time? I don't think that's how that works. Secondly, it's kind of hard to say because, you know, working in a funeral home, the funeral home I feel like is a very sterile environment for like say ghosts did exist and spirits did exist. If you die, I feel like your spirit would probably stay where you died rather than like a funeral home or like a medical examiner's office, don't you think?
Yeah, that's definitely what my opinions about it are. Is that, you know, if somebody's going to die, which they will, everyone does, but if their spirits like were connected to their body, I really don't think it would travel with the body. I would assume it would stay at place of death, not following them to their final resting place, in my opinion.
Yeah. Or you always hear the stories about, you know, people are in car accidents and their family members like see them within the hour or like, you know, whatever. So it's like you're either, you know, you die, you're at your place of death, or you're going to a family member, you're going to your house or like whatever it is. At least, you know, if it were true, quote unquote, this is all theoretical, but
Yeah, right.
that's what I would feel, you know what I mean?
Definitely, which is why I always never like when people ask me that question, like, "Oh, you ever see a spook? You ever see a specter?" It's like, oh, I don't really think that they would be, you know, hanging out around their body at the funeral home.
Honestly, if you think about it, I really don't think a spirit is going to be following their poor, you know, mangled body around to from the car accident to the medical examiner's office during the autopsy, back to the funeral home, hanging out there, going to the crematory. Like that's not on the ghost agenda, I feel like. I can't speak from experience,
Milk,
but
eggs, follow my non corporeal form around.
the funny thing about that though, and I think like me believing in spirits and believing in like a consciousness after death, I always like try to be super respectful and I like talk to my deceased patients usually. Like I talk to them. And I think that comes from a place of like they're around somewhere. Like I feel like they're watching me. And it's not like a creepy thing. It's not like a oh, they're watching every move like but it's like a, you know, if I'm undressing someone, I'm like, oh, okay, you know, let's get your pants off. Like, I'm gonna lift your legs here, okay? Or like, you know, if I need to get in somewhere, I'll say excuse me to like a dead person. It's like I don't know where that comes from, but it makes me feel better, and it makes me feel like, you know, they're still my patient in a way, and they're around somewhere, but where I don't know.
I mean, even though I don't really totally believe in ghosts, I also find myself doing the same thing of talking to people that have passed on,
Hmm.
just like, you know, casually, like you're saying. And it does like it does make you feel a certain way. Like it just feels normal and natural to do it. It's hard to
Yeah.
explain.
Yeah. For sure. Even just like compliments like, "Hey, you're looking good, Mr. Jenkins. Like, I like your tie." Like,
Yeah, even if
stuff
it's in the
like that.
goofy, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It is it's like it's a comfort thing, and I think it's kind of human nature to treat it that sort of way, to treat death that sort of way.
I think so too. So just so people know that I'm not totally boundlessly saying that I don't, have never seen anything. I've tried. Now listen, I've definitely tried. I have dabbled in some ghost hunting expeditions, as kooky as it might sound. Just this last Halloween, actually, I went out ghost hunting. We drove out to what's called the Witches Ball at a
Hmm.
cemetery, and it's apparently a hotspot for all this crazy activity. And we got stacked with all the necessary things. I mean, we got an EMF reader. A friend of mine had brought their Ouija board. We really
Oh my
had,
gosh.
we thought we had everything going on. We actually even had a really nice one of those nice recorders that's supposed to be able to like detect like even lower tones or whatever. And we sat out there like all night, and not a peep from the afterworld.
Oh, really? Yeah. I am actually a huge, huge fan of ghost hunting. I don't actively do it myself, but one of my favorite TV shows growing up, not to talk about TV shows a lot this episode, but one of my favorite TV shows growing up was Ghost Adventures. And
Hmm.
it's and it's these like, this like beefy bro going out with his other bros, like searching for ghosts, and they got all the high-tech equipment and they got the night vision cameras, and they're always like freaking out like, "Oh my god, did you hear that?" And I think that that stuff is true, and it's not just like, it's not sketched out, it's not written out. Like, I actually believe that show. I mean, some of it, I feel like that show can be a little staged sometime, for sure. I mean, it's like entertainment, you have to make sure it's entertaining, and obviously like ghost stuff doesn't happen all the time.
Hmm.
But I like truly believe in that kind of stuff, and I think it's really cool. Granted, I'd never gone ghost hunting myself, but I guess it's like a hit or miss kind of thing.
I did on a separate occasion. It wasn't necessarily for ghost hunting, but I was on a vacation down in Kentucky, and there was a sanatorium that wasn't that far. So it's called Waverly Hills, and Waverly Hills has actually been on like a few different like TV shows and stuff, or like ghost hunters have gone there, and all sorts of stories, like crazy stuff that happened. I mean, it was a tuberculosis ward, so it wasn't like a crazy institution that people were being abused or anything, but obviously people were dying a lot of tuberculosis. And they actually had like this like huge tunnel that goes all the way like down from the sanatorium to like this hillside, like underneath the hillside, where like hearses would be able to pull up and take the bodies away, because like they didn't want to just be wheeling all sorts of dead people past the like people that are trying to get better. So they had that secret tunnel, and it's just like all sorts of really cool stories that they were telling us as we took the tour. But they gave us opportunities to like, okay, we're on this floor. A lot of people see a lot of shadow people, so we're gonna have everyone turn off their lights and look down the hallway, see if you can see anything. We went to the rooftop, and they actually said, okay, we're not supposed to let you do this. They probably let everyone do this, but they made us feel special.
Yeah.
Said you can go off, like we don't need to. You guys can walk the full roof. You don't need us to walk you through here. You guys can just go check stuff out, take pictures. We'll meet back here in 20 minutes.
Hmm.
And I'm just like, the whole time I've been snapping photos just with my phone. And I was back at the hotel that night, and I was just like laying in my dark room with my brightness all the way up on my phone. And I was flipping through them, and I was like, nothing, can't see anything, not enough light. And I will say, we were on the roof, and they had just called us back, and I snapped, just kept snapping photos, just kept tapping my phone, snapping photos on the way back. And there were two shots, and one shot, it was kind of pointed out one of the windows, so there was a little bit of light coming in, and there was nothing. And then the next photo, which was taken, not even a second later, there was something like a big black shadow. And I
Whoa.
was
That's so
like,
cool.
dude, it did kind of make me like my heart stop a little bit when I saw that, like sitting in my bedroom, or the
Yeah.
hotel room, like, so ghosts, huh?
So them ghosts. That's
So them
really
ghosts,
cool.
yeah. So that is like the only time I've ever had something maybe happen that
Right.
is little paranormal of nature.
Right. Unfortunately, though, I did have a very intense experience with like a haunting in my place of residence. So when I was in college, I was about 20 years old. I lived in this house off campus with a couple of my friends. We were all music majors. We all played the bass. So we all kind of had the general, like, we all knew each other pretty well. We ended up finding this cheap house. It turns out it was a Section 8 house, which is, nothing wrong with that. But it was, run down, kind of old. I went to college in the South, so we were kind of in an area of like Civil War, historical battles, and stuff
Mm.
like that. And it's just something I grew up with. So, we were used to it, didn't think anything of that. Like, literally everywhere in the South is a Civil War historical battleground. So, like, whatever. So, we started living at this house and everything was fine, just like old house, creaky floorboards. The basement was kind of creepy, but like really not a big deal. All of a sudden, one day we started hearing footsteps around the house. And, when that first starts to happen, you kind of write it off like, oh, like it's just creaky floorboards, or like it's the wind, or like, maybe an animal's on the roof outside, or
Sure.
like, maybe someone's walking around in the house, because there were four of us that lived there. So it could be any one of us. But one night, me and one of my roommates were home, and my two other roommates were not. They were at class. And we heard footsteps like trudging up the stairs.
Okay.
So like very like distinct, like,
Oh.
yeah. And so obviously we were like, oh, like, our roommates are home. Like, let's go, let's go see, or like, let's shout out like, hey, I think we were like, oh, hey, like, what's up? And like, no response.
Hmm.
And so we go to look, literally no one is in the house. And when you hear someone like walk up the stairs and you don't hear the walking down the stairs part and no one's in the house, like, that's obviously something's going on. So that's when we were starting to be like, is something happening here? And then like things started to kind of like build.
Sure.
So we would hear like rattling of the windows, which could be like the wind or whatever. But then sometimes at night, windows would just like slam closed with like no reason whatsoever. They were like older windows, so they were fairly stuck in place.
Hmm.
But sometimes they would just slam closed, just like creepy stuff like that. We used to find, those little pony beads? They're like the little
Yeah.
plastic crafting beads.
Hmm.
We would find them around the house, like after cleaning, and we had no idea where they were coming from because we weren't like crafters, we were college kids.
Hmm.
um my roommate said that she would hear things like, when the sound when you drop a bead on the ground and it goes like ding 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 ding, and
Yeah.
then it rolls. She would hear that like all the time, she said.
Dude, that's creepy.
Yeah, I never actually saw stuff like that, but it turns out one of our college professors' wives was a shaman. So she was a medium and she talked to ghosts. And I know that's also something that people are very skeptical about.
Definitely.
But we were telling him about, our house and our living situation. And my roommate, she was Vietnamese, which actually plays into the story, but she started having really bad nightmares about like some like scary guy from the 1940s and like all of this crazy stuff going on. And she like stuff started to get thrown at her. And we were just kind of like, like what's happening? Like, what's up?
Dude,
And
this is
then,
unreal.
so we're telling our professor about it because we're pretty close with him. And he was like, well, my wife's a shaman. Like, she wants to make sure that my students are safe. Like, do you guys mind if she like comes over and like just takes a look or whatever? And, at this point, like I've always kind of liked this kind of stuff. So I was like, yeah, that sounds
You
great. Like,
get her over
please,
here.
please come to our house. Like, please come to our home. And so actually the night before she came, we had a washing machine and a dryer machine downstairs, and someone was doing their laundry. They turned the dryer machine on, but the mechanism stopped working as to where the dryer wasn't like turning, and
Hmm.
it was a gas dryer. So the heating mechanism was still heating up like pretty hot, but if it's not turning, that's just like heat directly onto your clothes that could like cause a fire pretty easily.
Hmm.
So like that happened right before she came over. which I know it could be coincidence. Like, I get it, all of you conspiracy theorists out there. But like, that's pretty significant to me, is that our house could have burned down like the day before this shaman lady came over. Anyways, so she comes over and she's like this like little like old lady, and she opens the door to our house, and the first thing she does is she looks at the stairs and she goes, "Oh, hello." And we're like,
Nope,
"Well,
nope, nope. Out of
whoa,
there.
what's going on?" And she's like, "Oh, there's a little girl on your stairs. She lives in your room." And I was like, "Oh, oh my God." Just like having someone that matter of factly like state to you, like, I mean, I get it. Like, I can understand, like, they make this stuff up. Like, they just say whatever they got to say. But, like, until you're, like, living in the moment and you, like, see that she saw someone and she looked at me and said, like, "Oh, there's a little girl running up and down your stairs. She lives in your room." It's like, I don't know why she would make, like, why would you make that up? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, so anyways, like the tour goes on, and our house was very old. It used to be a one-room house, and she could tell that the expansions that were built on, she was like, "This is new. This is not new. Like, this is old." There was 4 ghosts in our house that she talked to. So there was like an elderly woman who was very like motherly, and she actually kind of helped like protect us. There was a little girl, like I said. There was a guy that was dressed like he was from the 1940s, and that was really weird to hear, because that's exactly the guy that my roommate was having like show up in her dreams.
Oh God.
So yeah, so we didn't, she didn't know about like the specifics of what was happening. So to
Hmm.
hear her be like, "Oh yeah, there's a guy, he looks like he's wearing like a zoot suit from like the 1940s," it's like, oh my God, that's the guy from the dreams.
Mm.
And so the last ghost, which we belovingly called our racist basement ghost,
Oh jeez.
uh, so he lived in the basement. And so basically, what had happened is that our house was built on top of a Civil War battleground.
Hmm.
So he was actually a Confederate soldier that had died in battle. And, back then during the Civil War, they literally just buried the soldiers on the battlefield.
Hmm.
So his body was underneath of our house, supposedly. We're not going to like dig up and see if he's actually there, but
Right.
that's where his final resting place was. It just so happened that apparently, and this is all what this shaman lady is telling us, his body was buried in the basement directly under my roommate's room. Remember, she's Vietnamese, so she's brown. So the Confederate soldier was so mad that this brown girl was living in his house, because this was his house at this point, because he was just so angry, like angry spirit, like attached to the house, just like stuck there.
Hmm.
He was so mad that she was living there that he like picked on her specifically. And so we started to go down into the basement, and the shaman, she looks up at me and she's like, "I think your roommate should stay upstairs." I was like, okay. So I'm down there with her, and my roommate's upstairs, and my roommate starts like coughing pretty heavily. And the lady looks at me and she's touching her throat, and she goes, "I think he was shot in his throat, and I think he's doing that." And so she's like having a conversation with this like racist basement ghost, and she's literally telling him like, "You can't do that. Like, this is their house now. Like, you need to let them be." And he's just apparently a very angry ghost, and like,
Hmm.
it didn't really, I wouldn't say it helped. I didn't think it helped the situation, but it was just very interesting to like know what was going on. And I'd never had an experience like that where someone comes and says that they can talk to spirits, and then the things that they are saying like lines up with so much of what we were experiencing. It's really, really cool just to like have that experience. So that's like one of the major reasons why I believe in spirits and why I believe in ghosts and stuff like that.
Dude, that's crazy. Did you guys like how much did you tell the shamans, like, so your professor, so like did she know anything going in, like that she could have, potentially
No,
quote unquote
no.
lied or, inferred something?
Yeah, because like we really only told our professor that we were like having issues with like footsteps and like stuff flying around the house.
Okay, so the actual
And
like symptoms of it, not like
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like obviously we didn't, know. I don't think we told him about like the dreams or anything. So it's just like crazy to hear that kind of stuff. Like, and of course, like his wife, like, you know, she's this little old lady, like, and it's not like we were posting our experiences on Facebook back then. Like, that wasn't really, we kept it very between ourselves. So it was just
Sure.
very cool to see that kind of thing.
Dude, that was a wild ride.
I know,
Wow.
I'm sorry. It was a little involved story, but like I just definitely it's very rare that people experience that kind of thing. And I just like that's like one of my big party stories that I always tell, to be honest. And it's why I believe in spirits and why I think it's important to like respect, you know, the dead. And I don't know. I believe in them.
So we've both, seen some things, I guess, outside of the funeral industry, but when it comes to actually being at funeral homes and like, seeing ghosts and being spooked, I guess really the most that I've experienced, it's what a lot of people experience that you're in a basement and you're walking up the stairs, and you turn off the light and you just feel eyes in your back, something staring at you, like you get those your hackles you gotta raise up and you
Yeah, you just feel kind of spooky. Yeah, and funeral homes are generally like very old buildings. I mean, like especially family-owned funeral homes.
Mhm.
Like they're like been in the family for years, like thousands of dead bodies have passed through the halls, like and they're like either falling apart, like basement creepy, like no windows, whatever. So I think there is like an atmosphere of like it being creepy down there, especially just like when you're alone with like I don't know, 10 to 20 dead bodies. Like, it's just creepy. Like, it's just creepy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like it's literally the setup for some type of like horror style movie. I think
hmm
the biggest scare I've ever gotten is like just embalming by myself, just minding my own business. And like sometimes when you soap somebody up, their limbs get a little slippery, and like I've had arms, slide off the table and like smack me like when I'm not looking,
Oh
and
my
that's
gosh.
that has definitely been like one of those moments that I got to see how high my scream goes. So
That is so common, to be honest. There have been countless times when I've been just moving a dead body and then their arm kind of flops over and my heart literally stops because like for some reason it looks like they're moving, but they're not. It just looks like it. But in general, like I haven't really had like spooks every day at the funeral home, but I know every funeral director has their story for sure.
I actually did some digging just because I haven't had my own story yet. And I basically went through and asked like a bunch of other directors at my funeral home and embalmers and like, okay, what have you guys seen? The story that I have is actually taken from the housekeeper from my first funeral home gig when I was younger. And so she swears up and down she had an experience at the home. She was cleaning one day and there was like no visitations, no other families in the building. Directors were just in the offices upstairs, and she was cleaning on the main floor. And a gentleman just like had walked out of one of the visitation rooms and up the stairs and like disappeared because it was like one of those spiral style stairs. So
hmm
he disappeared onto the upper landing, and she was calling after him. He's like, sir, can I help you? You're not supposed to be going up there. And she ran up the stairs and there was no one there. And
Wow.
she she always, after having time to process it, she always is like, wow, you know what, I think that looks a lot like the old owner of the funeral home, the one that passed
Right.
away.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of fascinating.
Yeah, that makes sense though. Like if you're an owner of like a family funeral home and it your whole entire life is in this building, like that I can definitely see you coming back to like hang out as a spirit or whatever.
Right.
Check in on things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I have had a spook story, and this is a little bit shorter than my other one, thankfully. But I remember, so I used to do the body removal company, right? And a lot of it was midnight hours, picking up dead bodies and going to the funeral home by yourself to drop off said dead bodies. And during these times, people don't generally live at funeral homes anymore. So usually after 5 p.m., there's like no one there really, unless there's a visitation. But after like 10 p.m., definitely no one there. So you're all by yourself in this empty building with a bunch of dead bodies. And as a body removal person, I was like in this position a lot. So I remember one time I was like routine dropping off a dead body by myself, like just picked him up at a nursing home or whatever. This funeral home I had been in several times before. I was very familiar with it. So I'm just like doing my thing, like kind of on autopilot, like do 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 do. And all of a sudden, I'm dropping this body off in the prep room, and I hear kind of like a rattling, like a glass rattling, like windows
Oh.
rattling. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird. Like no one's here, and it's not windy outside. It was like not windy at all. Like it was dead outside. And I was like, okay, maybe it's like an animal or something. And I was like, okay, if it's an animal like in the funeral home, like I should check, like I should make sure. Cause I don't work here, but like I should probably figure out if there's like a raccoon like hanging out in the funeral home or
Right,
something.
at least to warn the staff when they come in the next day, you
Hmm.
know?
So I like go, so the prep room's in the garage. I go out of the garage into the main part of the funeral home. I'm in this main hallway now, and I hear the rattling, and it's like very like heavy, like and I like recognize it kind of like, you know, those glass display cases that are like in jewelry stores or like, I don't know, um, gun shops. Like, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Like with the glasses on all the sides, and they're like, they're kind of shaky sometimes. And you know, that sound like when you press your hands against it and you kind of shake it, it kind of sounds like rattling.
Mhm.
That's exactly what the sound was. And what I realized, what I remembered was that in the arrangement room, this specific funeral home had one of those glass display cases just to show like, you know, jewelry and like memorial like urns and stuff like that. And I realized that that's like where this sound was coming from.
Okay.
So I was like, at this point, I'm getting scared because I'm like, it sounds exactly like someone's just rattling the glass, like rattling the glass. And so I like walk over towards the room.
Jim, you're not, that's like rule number one. You don't go towards the thing.
Listen, I listen. So I'm walking towards the room, and all of a sudden the rattling gets louder. I turn around and I just leave. I'm like, no, no, this is not my job. I do not get paid enough to do this. So I left, and I actually
Good.
never like talked about it, never told anyone about it. I never like checked to see if it was actually like a raccoon or something, but like that was my one like ghost experience in a funeral home.
Okay, that's that. No, that is too much already in one lifetime of ghosts that you've had.
I know, I know, I don't have never told you those stories before,
No, you
right?
haven't. I don't know how they've like not come
Yeah.
up before. It's crazy.
I know they're so long and they're so involved, but like they're just so vivid. Like I'm not lying, guys. Like that stuff really happened to me, and like I totally believe that it's 100% like ghosts and stuff.
Totally. Well, I don't know. Maybe you've kind of changed my perspective a little bit on things with all that.
Yeah, I
Seems like a
honestly I
lot.
do hope that people have experiences like that. I think it's really cool to be able to like think about that and think about the afterlife like that. Like I know a lot of people, especially in grieving, kind of think about that stuff more. I actually not to keep talking about TV, but there's a really really cool docu-series on Netflix right now. It's called Surviving Death, and it's actually about like people that have lost people or you know near death experiences. I really recommend it. I think it's really cool, but they kind of cover what we're talking about right now and people exploring that kind of thing and research about it.
I think another interesting aspect about ghost or someone passing or that is the families that are affected by their loved ones passing away. I get a lot of stories from family members that they seem to have like a sign, like they've been getting signs from their loved one. I'll be sitting at the arrangement conference table, and like the lights will flicker after like I ask them a question or like ask them to choose something, and then they'll be like, "Oh, well, I guess there's our answer," like their
Wow.
loved ones speaking to them through our fluorescent light bulbs.
That's so funny. Yeah, you know, that's obviously like if you work there and you know that your lights flicker, then obviously. But yeah, I think people do like look for that kind of stuff, especially like when a relative dies. It's a really volatile, like emotional time in someone's life, and you know, you wanna know that they're okay. Because we don't know a lot about the afterlife, I think families just want to know that their loved one is okay. Unless they're like total atheists, like don't believe in anything like that, then that's different. But
Totally, yeah.
I think a lot of families, especially, you know, like pseudo religious, like Americans, just kind of like want to know like if they're okay, what happened, like is there anything that I can like tell if they're okay? And I think a lot of people look for signs, obviously. Um, but I think it's cool to be able to kind of grieve in that way, even if the signs aren't true. Like, even if it's not a spirit sign, it still means something to the family, and it's still something that they can like hold on to in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even if it's, quote unquote placebo, it's something that you can still find meaning and it can be valuable to you. I think another family that I had served, um, the deceased had really loved butterflies, and like, well, the day of the service, like a butterfly had like landed on one of the family members, and that was like a huge deal for
Oh,
them, and
yeah,
so
that's so sweet.
yeah, so that's I don't think there's anything wrong in trying to seek signs after someone passes away. Not at all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Mulder, I really appreciate you sharing all those really kooky stories with me. Even though I'm not a huge believer myself, it's been really interesting hearing from your perspective, like all these things that have happened to you and to people you know. And honestly, I don't know, it gives me a lot to think about.
Well, Scully, the truth is out there.
And that is all this week on MortMic. We'd love to connect with you guys on our socials. Like, follow, and subscribe to us on our Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube at MortMic Podcast. That is MortMicPodcast. It would mean a lot to hear from you guys. Actually, if you have a really cool ghost story, drop it in a comment, rate, and subscribe on whatever podcast hosting site that you use. And if you have any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear or any burning questions you might have about death, shoot us an email at mortmicpodcast@gmail.com.
I also want to give a huge thank you to our friend Marson for the use of his song titled Deputies of Death, which he produced just for our show. You can check out his Bandcamp at Marson, that's MARSON, music.bandcamp.com. Thanks, Marson.
And be sure to tune in every other week on Thursdays for some more casual discussions on death. Thank you so much for listening. This has been MortMic.
Bye.
Bye.